lovelies, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you guys are here for another fun video. I am Katie and you are watching my 31 days of Vlogtober and we are at day number 30. So we are just about done with this, which seems crazy to me that we've done 30 of these, but here we are, and I'm so grateful for all of you. Thank you again a million times for coming and spending a little bit of time with me. You guys are the best. So let's go over our prompt from yesterday was movies you love to love. So I wanted to hear about those movies that just fill your heart with joy, that you want everybody to know about. And you already know what my movies are, because I've talked about it yesterday. But let's go ahead and do my book choice first. And I was going to do a couple movies today, but I think I may wax poetic about the two movies that I told you about. I may just keep it to those two today. But the book I want to talk to you guys about is actually an art book. And I've never really purchased a book that was like sold as an art book before, but this one I couldn't help myself because of the cover. So just look at this thing. It's called Horror Cinema, and would you check out that freaking gorgeous picture of the creature from the Black Lagoon? He's amazing. So this is by Taschen, this company down below, and I guess that they are an art book company. So they started in Germany. They have a couple bookstores in the United States throughout like bigger cities like New York. I think there's one in LA. And so basically they focus on books that are, showcasing the art on the inside of them. And this book definitely has some beautiful pieces of art in it. But just looking at the cover, you see the creature on the front, and then you've got this awesome picture of Bram Stoker's Dracula played by Gary Oldman here, and you've got some of his brides down below. So automatically off the bat you've got some gorgeous stuff going on this book. It's a big, huge book. There's over 600 pages in here. It is delightful. And I looked it up online because, like I said, I wasn't sure what this Taschen was because there was no author. It just had some editors. So it was edited by Paul Duncan and Jürgen Mueller. So when I fell down the Google rabbit hole, it told me that Taschen is this art store. I don't know. And I guess they started as a comic book seller originally and kind of got into the art book sales, I guess. But I absolutely love this book. It's $20 off of their website if you want to buy it directly through them, or you can buy them through Barnes & Noble, which is where I picked it up. But throughout this book, they give you some absolutely gorgeous pictures. So let me kind of just flip through some of this stuff here. So it's pages and pages and pages of beautiful photos. Some of them are a little explicit, so I won't show you all of them. But it's kind of broken up too, in a beautiful way. They kind of segment horror, into different categories. So part one is what is horror, and it gives you a nice little introduction. And then they break it up into slashers and serial killers, cannibals, freaks, and hillbillies, revenge of nature and environmental horror, which has got like Godzilla and King Kong and things like that in it, science fiction horror, The Living Dead, which has got Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein, ghosts and haunted houses, which is my personal favorite genre or subgenre, I guess, of horror. And then possession, demons, and tricksters, which is my least favorite subgenre of horror. And then you've got voodoo cults and Satanists, vampires and werewolves, the monstrous feminine, which kind of focuses on female villains like in Black Sunday, The Brood, The Witches. And then the final portion of the book is Taschen's 50 favorite horror films. So like I said, it kind of just breaks through a lot of different things. A lot of different elements are in this, but I will show you my two favorite photos in this. And the first one is, of course, of my favorite horror man, the master of the macabre right there, Mr. Vincent Price, with his dancing skeleton. And this was actually when he was filming A House on Haunted Hill. So I just absolutely adore that photo. And then the next photo I want to show you is, I'm sure you're already going to know which creatures I want to show you because I'm kind of obvious in my absolute adoration for them, but they are the two, I think, greatest horror characters of all time. So let me find them very quickly. There they are. These two gorgeous beings. The Frankenstein creature and the bride. Oh, I love that photo so much. I mean, In Bride of Frankenstein, she is in that film for such a small amount of time, but she is absolutely brilliant. I love her to pieces, and Elsa did such an incredible job encapsulating that role. If you've seen Bride of Frankenstein, you also know that she plays a very small part at the beginning as Mary Shelley, and I've always loved that about that movie. So pick up Tation's Horror Cinema. It's a beautiful coffee table book if you've got a coffee table. I do not, because I have little miniature dachshunds and I do not need them running into a coffee table, and our living room's pretty small, so we really don't have a whole lot of room for one. But if we move and I'm able to showcase my books, this one's definitely going to go front and center on it. So definitely pick up Horror Cinema. Like I said, it's not too expensive. It's about 20 bucks, like I said, on their website. And I think you'll see a pile of good information. And if you're looking for a movie to watch, it may not be the best book to read, because you're just going to get a million more ideas of movies to see. So that is my book pick for today. So let's get into my movies, okay? So like I said yesterday, my movie choices for today are Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. So these are not horror films to purist horror fans, but they were my gateway drug. They got me into horror, so I very much consider them to be horror films. And I know people will, it's a point of contention, I suppose, but I don't care. And they make me so happy. They are still those comfort movies that I watch pretty regularly. I mean, I'd say it's always at least a yearly watch, but sometimes it's quarterly or monthly, just depending upon what's going on in my life. I've talked before about my anxiety and panic disorders that I have, but those movies are kind of my comfort. So if I find myself in the throes of a panic attack, I will throw on Mr. Boogedy or Bride of Boogedy, and they have an exceptional way of calming me and making me feel better. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So I will tell you, I have loved these movies since day one. Mr. Boogedy premiered on April 20th, 1986. And I was 2.5 years old when that movie premiered on the Wonderful World of Disney. And I was probably a little too small to see it, completely honest with you, but it was on Disney Channel. My parents thought, no, it's fine. It's Disney. And it scared the living bejesus out of me. Oh my God. But like I said, I think that this is what really projected me headfirst into my love for horror, because it did. It scared me, but I wanted to see more. I just wanted to keep watching it. It was, back in the VCR days when my parents, thank God, taped it onto a VHS tape for me, and I continued to watch it and rewind it and watch it and rewind it and over and over and over again. Oh my God, I thought I was going to drive my family crazy. And then they decided the next year to release Bride of Boogedy. So that one dropped on April 12th, 1987, and I, again, taped Bride of Boogedy and watch it, rewind it, over and over and over again. So really, I kind of consider these two movies to be one gigantic movie, because Mr. Boogedy is only 45 minutes long. It was actually filmed as a pilot episode for a potential TV series. And the story behind Mr. Boogedy is actually quite funny. When they hired the people to write this story, Michael Janover, he was actually trying to create something more along the lines of Scary Movie, those shticky slapstick comedy movies that are based off of horror movies. And so that's kind of the vibe he was going with at first. And then when it got picked up by Disney, of course, he had to finagle and tweak some things so that it would fit the parameters of the Disney Channel. So it wasn't exactly the movie he was expecting. But when they told him, we want to come up with this pilot, he put together this 45-minute beautiful film, and I am so grateful that he did. So it was written by Michael Janover. John Addison, I think, is the name of the composer. And throughout these movies, between Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy, the film score is probably my favorite thing about these movies. I mean, there are so many things to love. The atmosphere, the acting, take it as you will, but it's either absolutely horrible, you love it, or it's just so fabulous, it's just so good. Anyway, so the acting I think is great, but really that musical score is haunting and terrifying, and I always think it's so great that the person that wrote the film score for Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy also wrote the film score for Murder, She Wrote. So if you've ever watched Murder, She Wrote, and you know the theme song in the beginning of Murder, She Wrote, same person wrote Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. So it's a fun little fact. If you're, watching Hallmark movies and mysteries and an episode of Murder, She Wrote pops up, that's who wrote that song. So I'm going to have a lot of fun facts, I'm sure, throughout this, but the whole premise of the show is based off of this family of 5 that has relocated. They are moving to New England because the dad in the family, Carlton, and he is trying to open up his own franchise for a company called Gag City. So they're like a novelty shop that sells jokes and pranks and things like that. So you already know this guy has got a pretty weird sense of humor in general, but you can tell his family deals with this every single day. In the first couple minutes of the movie, you see the family's van, which is decked out in clowns, and they stop on the side of the road to have a little picnic rest on their way to their new home. And you find out that they have bought this house. This is going to be their first house they've ever owned. So whether they were maybe renting a house or staying in an apartment, nobody really knows. But this is going to be their first house, and they're so excited to kind of start their new life there. The kids are less than thrilled. They'd rather stay where they were. They had their friends and their lives there, and you can tell that it's a bit of a point of contention, especially for the oldest daughter, Jennifer. She seems a bit less than thrilled to be picking up and moving, but Carlton assures her, we're going to be starting a new life, and you're going to have your own room, and so he's really trying to sell this really big to her. And so then they get back in the van and they start heading to their new home, which, like I said, they've purchased sight unseen. And when they get there, you can tell that this has been done because the house is dilapidated. It is the quintessential haunted house. It's a dark and stormy night when they pull up to the house. Of course, it's just thunder and lightning. There's no rain at all that they have to deal with, which is very, lucky for them. But it kind of sets the tone. So you, as you're pulling up to the house, you see that the realty company is C.B. Karloff Realtors, which is a beautiful nod to Boris Karloff. And there is a sign that says "Not Really Haunted" in like kind of a neon type sign. And while they're there, of course, the knot blows out, so it says "Really Haunted." But when they walk into their new home, they are greeted by a man covered in shadow because the whole house is dark. They can't seem to find a light switch. And he approaches them, introduces himself as Mr. Neil Witherspoon, who he says he's kind of like there to welcome them to the town and to warn them to get out because the house is haunted by Mr. Boogedy. So now you've got the title character introduced, and the whole family is like, first of all, this guy was just hanging out in our house before we got here, and now he says that it's full of ghosts. So what do we do? And Carlton's, of course, like, okay, cool, yeah, ghosts. All right, see you later. Thanks for coming, And he's like, let's take a look around and get acclimated to the new house. And so you follow the kids. The boys are down in the basement kind of creeping around, looking to see if they can find anything. And Jennifer goes upstairs to kind of bring up her suitcase and find her room. And she's walking around the house. And she makes this comment about probably nobody here ever heard of Bruce Springsteen, which always made me laugh because in my family's household, we are huge Bruce Springsteen fans. So it always made everybody laugh that there was that little piece of pop culture kind of embedded into this movie, and it's forever one of our favorite family moments. But, the boys are downstairs and they're shuffling around, and Corwin and Ari are the 2 boys. So Corwin is played by David Faustino, who actually plays Bud on Married with Children. And then Ari is played by Benji Gregory. And Benji is actually from the show Elf. So if you were an 80s kid, obviously you watched Elf, which stood for Alien Life Form. But that's where those two boys are from. And then Jennifer's character is played by Kristy Swanson. So if you are a horror fan, you should probably know who Kristy Swanson is. I mean, she played Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the original film. She went on to do a couple other small bit parts. She was in, like, Pretty in Pink? Yeah, Pretty in Pink. And then she was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And then more recently, she starred in the television show Psych, which you guys already know I'm absolutely enamored with. But she played one of the lead characters' love interests in that show. So I've known about Kristy Swanson since I was a child. I actually got to meet her a couple years ago at a comic convention, and it was a very cool moment. But I really just wanted to talk to her about Mr. Boogedy, and I felt like she was like, okay. And I'm like, all right, well, I tried. But it was cool to say I met Kristy Swanson. But so like I said, Jennifer's up and around the house upstairs, and the boys are downstairs. And the smallest boy, Ari, which is Reginald Ernest, his name is not Aurie, which if you look it up on Wikipedia, that's what they say his name is. But it's not Ari, it's R-E, standing for Reginald Ernest, which is an awful name. So the fact that they want to create Ari, I think that that's a awesome name, actually. So Corwin and Ari and Jennifer are the kids. The adults, Eloise and Carlton, are actually played by Mimi Kennedy and Richard Mazer. So they are iconic, you know, actors all around, and I think that they did a really good job of putting this group together. When Bride of Boogedy came out the following year, they kind of weren't able to solidify the whole cast again. They had you know, filming issues, and not everybody could come back. So Carlton and Eloise were the same characters, and then the only returning child was Corwin, who was played by David Faustino. The other kids got recast. Jennifer was recast by Tammy Lauren, who went on to be in Wishmaster, and I think that she was also on a daytime like soap opera. I'm not entirely sure which one. And then the younger son, Ari, was recast by Joshua Rudoy, and I don't know if he was in anything else. I've kind of tried to like research him. I haven't really seen a whole lot about him. And then other cast members were changed, but so after the kids are kind of walking around the house, they get told by Carlton. He comes downstairs, tells them it's time for bed. So they head back upstairs, and you cut to a scene with Jennifer hearing some noises in the house, and it sounds like somebody's sneezing, and she's looking around. She can't find anybody. So then it cuts to the next morning, and you know, she's asked how she slept, and she says, oh, not very well, you know, heard some sneezing and stuff going on. And then that evening, she has a direct encounter with Mr. Boogedy. So she hears the sneezing again, and finds herself face to face with Mr. Boogedy. And she refers to him as a hamburger face, and she says his face is like a grody grilled cheese sandwich at one point, which I don't really understand those correlations between his grotesque face and these food items, but it is neither here nor there. Anyway, so what's made me laugh though, I'm like, a grilled cheese sandwich, all right, whatever. And so now she has directly seen Mr. Boogedy. She knows for a fact that the house is haunted, but the boys are still, you know, they're poking fun at her, and the parents are like, okay, you're just tired, let's get some sleep. Well, the next morning, when the boys are downstairs and they're kind of running around playing cops and robbers, and they've got these little cap guns, and they get into the kitchen, and all of a sudden they start hearing noises coming on in the kitchen. Cupboard doors opening and closing, and the faucet going on and off, and I think the tea kettle goes off, and then you hear Mr. Boogedy's laugh. And, you know, oh, some shit's about to go down. And so now the young boys have now had their experience, and Jennifer's had her experience. So it's time to go research the haunting in this house. And so they decide to go to the local, the Historical Society. And so when they get there, they find themselves face to face with Neil Witherspoon again. And Neil Witherspoon is, of course, played by John Astin, who, like I said, is just insanely talented. And so he tells them about this haunting. So it dates back to the Pilgrim times, and Mr. Boogedy was actually somebody named William Hanover, who was very disliked in the town, and very disliked. He was a mean old man, you know what I mean? Like, he just was that guy that nobody really wanted to deal with, even in Puritan times. And he had this love for one of the pilgrims in town, and her name was Widow Marion, and she had a son named Jonathan. And so Mr. Boogedy kind of goes off the reservation crazy and tries to get Widow Marion to fall in love with him. So he decides, what better way for me to get this woman to fall in love for me than to kidnap her kid? I mean, that seems like a great idea, right? So he kidnaps Jonathan, tells her that if she doesn't marry him, he's going to do something to her kid. And so he actually goes and tries to ensure that everything's going to work out perfectly. And he finds the devil and trades his soul for a magic cloak. So the cloak is supposed to be designed to give him these amazing powers. And so he goes back to his house to try out his new powers and ends up blowing up his own house. So him inside, Jonathan inside, and so I think Widow Marion may have been like outside at the time, or she just died of, I don't know, grief. But anyway, so everybody in this situation becomes a ghost. So Jonathan and Mr. Boogedy are trapped in the house. Widow Marion is trapped outside of the house. She is not able to come in to get her son. So they have been separated from each other for 300 years. And so that's the origin story of Mr. Boogedy and company. So the sneezing that Jennifer was hearing around the house was actually Jonathan, because Jonathan was sick and he was actually going to the doctor when Mr. Boogedy or William Hanover apprehended him. So that's where the sneezing comes from around the house. And so you've got some more shenanigans going on, and you know, Jennifer and the boys go home and they want to tell their mom and dad about what's going on in this house. They finally figured out who the ghosts are, and in typical I don't believe you, I'm an adult kind of fashion, you know, the parents are like, oh, sure, yeah, house is haunted, okay. And there, of course, they've got their own agenda. They're trying to show the kids these new different like gags that they have for the potential new store that they're going to open. And so all of a sudden things start moving, and they have this huge like fake mummy character that kind of lifts itself up and starts dancing around the living room. And so it ends, and Carlton goes, all right, so how did that happen? And all the kids go, ghosts? And Carlton's like, no, I mean, seriously, I'm not mad about it. I just want you to tell me how it happened. And the kids are like, no, like, seriously, ghost. And so then you hear Mr. Boogedy's laugh again. So at this point, we're already, you know, over halfway through this movie, and you've not seen Mr. Boogedy yet. So we are just kind of getting these, you know, movements and happenings and his terrifying laugh. And so at this point, the whole family's freaked out, and they're like, you know what, we're going to just all sleep together, and we're going to stay in the living room, sleep by the fire. And so they tell ghost stories, and things happen, you know, like they always do when you sit around and tell ghost stories. And so everyone heads to bed. And Eloise, of course, gets woke up because Carlton smacks her in his sleep. So she's up, she goes to get herself a midnight snack, which is an entirely too big snack. Excuse me, if you watch this movie, she makes this damn plate that's like, she's got bread and cheese and meat and fruit, and oh my gosh, it's like she was going to eat for a family of 5 all by herself. And so all of a sudden she starts hearing this tapping noise as she's like getting her meal together, and she goes to investigate, and it is Widow Marion standing outside the back door. And so Eloise invites her in the house, and she explains that she cannot come in because of Mr. Boogedy. And she proceeds to tell Eloise what she needs to do with her family to get rid of Mr. Boogedy. So now everybody has seen a ghost at this point, except for Carlton. So now they decide they're going to go confront Mr. Boogedy. They're going to go try and talk to him and see what they can do. And the kids are like, I don't know about this part. I think that's the greatest idea. And at a point, they get separated. And so the kids go to try and, I don't know, try and figure things out on their own. They end up walking straight into Jonathan's ghost. And so Jonathan is also telling them how they need to get rid of Mr. Boogedy, because if he gets a hold of them, he will keep them there and not let them leave. So then you get to the final battle and you finally get introduced to Mr. Boogedy. Okay, so we are at 40 minutes before Mr. Boogedy shows up. And he is absolutely terrifying. Okay, look at this damn face. Look at that face. As a 2.5-year-old, me watching this movie, it scared the hell out of me. And I can tell you right now, when I saw this movie, I remember exactly where I was sitting. I remember exactly what I was doing. I was sitting on the floor in front of our couch. We had our couch kind of pushed back up to our far wall, and our TV was on the opposite wall. And so I was sitting on the floor. I had my blanket kind of pulled up to my face, like right underneath my nose. And I was watching this going, there's no way I can handle this. So scary. But literally it was a 2-minute, situation. And then they have apprehended Mr. Boogedy's cloak, and he disappears. So everyone thinks, oh, everything's fine. We've beat him. And, we get to the end of the movie. But then that's where Bride of Boogedy starts, because you come to find out in Bride of Boogedy that Mr. Boogedy is not gone. That just because you took his cloak doesn't mean that he's been exorcised or, whatever it is that you have to do to get rid of a ghost. So Mr. Boogedy follows along this new storyline where they find out Mr. Boogedy is still very much around, and it's just crazy. But this movie, it was like they just got like double the amount of a cash flow for it, so everything was just a little bit bigger and a little bit better. And when you talk to people about Mr. Boogedy, Bride of Boogedy, everyone has got a favorite between the two. Like, some people absolutely love Mr. Boogedy and hated Bride of Boogedy. Some people, didn't really like Mr. Boogedy, but they thought Bride of Boogedy was really funny. And of course, I love them both equally. I love them both so much. But I really love Bride of Boogedy because it's so much longer. I mean, it's double the amount of time we got with the first one. So we get to really dive into the characters, and it just... oh my God, I just love it so much. So, we're following along the same family. The kids have changed up again, like I said. But we meet a new character. It's not Neil Witherspoon anymore. It's now Walter Witherspoon. And so in Mr. Boogedy, Neil's talking to Jennifer's character and says that he has a son her age who's unusual. And then we get to this movie, and I think that Walter is supposed to be Neil's son, but he's much older than Jennifer's character, so I don't know what he was talking about with that. And he's so weird. He's like the weirdest character in maybe any movie I've ever seen. He's just one weird thing after another with this guy. And there's one point where he's making ice cream because they're having this huge Lucifer Falls carnival, and he's making like spinach with crunchy bacon bit ice cream, and then he's got one that's chocolate and it's got pieces of onion in it. I mean, it was just like, what is going on with this guy? Weird is an understatement. So like I said, I'm guessing that that's what they were doing, because John Astin did not reprise his role in the second movie. They had Walter instead. So I'm guessing that that's what they were going with that. But what a lunatic. He's so weird. And he is in charge of the Historical Society again. So like I said, I think that that's what they were trying to insinuate, was that Neil is maybe retired and now his son Walter has taken over. Anyway, but it is crazy. But then this story, I mean, it really kind of dives into a lot of things. We get to see, Carlton has now acquired his joke shop with Gag City, and so they get to go see his new store, and it used to be an old wax museum that has all these creepy old prompts. You have one still of a mad scientist, and then one of Jack the Ripper going after one of his, victims. And then you've got all these gorgeous, like, wax characters, and Carlton's so excited about turning this place into a joke shop, and you get this really great side story from Walter. You know, he's walking them around, and he says this man used to own the place, but he disappeared one day without a trace and left everything just as you see it. And he goes, "It's quite a story. I'll tell you all about it one day." And every time I see that, it makes me sad, because we didn't get a one day, and we don't know the story, and it's haunted me for years. But I don't know the story. I just want to know what happened with this guy. But I think that, like I said, when they were kind of developing it as a sitcom series, they probably would have delved further into it. But alas, we're not privy to an elongated storyline. We just get these two fabulous films. But I'm not going to go into huge detail about this one. Suffice it to say, it has possession in it, which you guys know is my favorite thing ever, but it is done so well in this movie. It's so creepy, and Carlton is the one that gets possessed, and it's terrifying. And, you know, it's sad to lose John Astin in this movie, but instead of John Astin, we gain Eugene Levy. So Eugene Levy is in this movie. And of course, I think the whole world knows who Eugene Levy is. If you don't know what Schitt's Creek is, which is what he's most recently been on with his son, Dan Levy. And it is such a brilliant show. So I implore you to please go watch Schitt's Creek if you have not. But this is one of the first things I ever saw Eugene Levy in. He played Tom Lynch, this cantankerous old grump of a man. And every time I see him, like if I watch like reruns of Schitt's Creek, like I'll just watch it on Netflix. And every time I see him, it makes me laugh, because I think of Tom Lynch and the things that he's done since that role. He makes me so incredibly happy. So I love Eugene Levy, and you will get a good chuckle out of his character. I guarantee it. He is such a piece of comic relief that even if you don't care for any of the other characters, he kind of makes up for everybody else. But of course, I love these movies. I love the characters and everything about them. So the ending with this movie is so great. They have a terrific element. They bring in a fortune teller, you know, a medium, and Madelenska is one of my favorite characters, and in maybe the whole movie series. She is the quintessential fortune teller. You know, she's very reminiscent back to the werewolf, you know, when we had that incredible character in that movie, played by Miss Ospinskaya. But I love it so much, and I think her name it's Karen Kondasian, I think. Karen Kondasian. She is just really terrific in this role. So I love these movies. Like I said, I could talk about them forever. I'm not going to give away the rest of the movie. I want you guys to check this out. It is available on Disney Plus. You should see it. It is so good. So I think that's where I'm going to end it with this, because like I said, I feel like I could just talk about this movie forever. But I don't want to give it away. So we'll end it there. But I also want to just go over again, if you guys are interested in doing the watch with me on my birthday coming up. My birthday is November 8th, and it's next Sunday. So if you guys are interested, you know, we'll maybe set up a time for us all to start our movies, and I'll just do maybe a YouTube live, and we can watch it together and have a good chuckle about it. So that is, I think, all I'm going to say about Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. But suffice it to say, please watch these movies if you have not seen them. They are completely 80s, so they are definitely dated. They have the very goofy green-tinged CGI, but I love these films. And so if you really want to get a good understanding of who I am as a person, I think that watching these would give you a pretty good representation of what a goof-ass I am and how much those movies mean to me. So I think that they're also why ghost and haunted house films are my favorite in the horror genre. So Anyway, that's my pick for today is Mr. Boogedy and Bride of Boogedy. Watch them together. Watch them back to back if you can. It'll be an absolute treat for you, I promise. So let's move on to my TV show today. And my TV show is one that actually ran from 2011 to 2017, I think. Let me get my page flipped here. Yes, it premiered on October 28th of 2011 and it went through March 31st of 2017. And this amazing show ran on NBC, and it's called Grimm. So if you have not seen Grimm, the general premise is that it follows this character named Nick Burkhart, and he is a Portland police officer, and he is kind of just a regular guy, you know, works his normal shift with his partner Hank, and, you know, doesn't really think anything of it until one day his aunt comes to town. So she kind of drops a bomb on him and says things are going to change because his Aunt Marie, she is dying. She's come down with cancer, and so she's going to be passing away. And when she does, she has a feeling that the abilities that she has are going to transfer and pass on to her nephew, because they're kind of the last of the line for the Grimms, which are kind of they're descendants of the brothers Grimm, who, you know, wrote those incredible tales, you know, and so she tells him that he's going to start seeing things that he can't really understand, and she tells him he needs to go to, she has a trailer, and inside the trailer is kind of everything he needs to kind of further discover his new set of skills. And so his new set of skills kind of comes on very quickly, and as he is a detective, he kind of encounters many different people throughout his days, and the first time he sees something strange is when he's walking down the street with his partner. He looks across the way and sees a woman walking out of a building, and she changes into this like weird witchy type character, and he isn't sure what he saw at first, and asks Hank, you know, if he saw anything strange, and he's, no, everything's fine. And so he now sees that these things are going to start changing, and it's called voguing. So when these people change into their alter ego characters, you find out that they're called Wesen, which is everything in this TV show is kind of got a Germanic origin because the Brothers Grimm were from Germany, and so the whole story kind of originates from like the Black Hills of Germany. And so Vogue means like to change, and Wesen means being or creature in German. So a lot of these names for the creatures are all in German as well. So the woman that he saw changing, you find out that she is what's called a Hexenbeast, which is a witch for all intents and purposes. And then Nick encounters his second Wesen, and it is who becomes one of his favorite people in the whole world, but his name is Monroe. And Monroe is a Blutbot, which means he is kind of a werewolf type character. And so throughout the series, it's kind of a creature of the week. You get a new creature, you get a new backstory about what that creature is, what that creature does, and it's just so entertaining. I loved everybody that was in this show. So Nick was played by David Giantoli, and David went on, he's in that show A Million Different Pieces, or A Million Little Things. I think it's A Million Little Things, and which is also starring James Roday, who was from Psych. So I watched the first season, I really liked it, but I've kind of fallen off the wagon. I haven't watched it in like 2 seasons, so I got to get back on that one. I really enjoyed it, but that's kind of where he's transitioned to. And then his partner Hank was played by Russell Hornsby, and Russell was actually in one of the episodes of Fear Itself that I talked about before. He played a cop in the Eater episode. And then Bitsy Tulloch plays Juliet Silverton, which is Nick Burkhart, the main character's girlfriend. And then Reggie Lee plays another friend detective at the precinct, named Wu. And then Bree Turner comes in later, and she plays a character named Rosalie Calvert, who is another Wesen. She's a Fuchsbau, which is kind of like a fox Wesen. And then you're introduced to Sasha Royce, who plays Captain Sean Renard, who is Nick's captain at the precinct. And Claire Coffey kind of rounds out the whole group. And she plays Adeline Shade, who was that first Hexen Beast that he saw. And she becomes a main character as the series progresses. She kind of has a weird arc. She kind of goes up and down and being terrible, and then she's okay, and then she's terrible again, and then you just really don't know what's going on with her for most of the series. But I loved, like I said, I loved that it was a Creature of the Week deal, and it was kind of a police procedural. It was set in Portland, Oregon, so you had the beautiful forests in Oregon kind of as the main backdrop, and I really loved everything about this show. And I recently found out that they kind of have greenlit maybe a spin-off series for this, following a female Grimm now instead of, you know, Nick's character. But they are talking about maybe incorporating old cast members and bringing them back for this new series. They did have another Grimm that entered into the series towards the end of the show. Her name was Trouble. So I'm kind of hoping maybe they'll either go with like Trouble route and maybe follow her along, or maybe Nick's kids, because Nick does end up having 2 kids. And so maybe, you know, one of those kids will, well, half. He's like a stepdad to a kid, and then he has a kid. So I'm hoping that maybe it follows along, you know, one of those groups. But anyway, it's highly entertaining. It is available for streaming. I think it's on Amazon Prime right now and Hulu. And it is just so entertaining. Like I said, you'll absolutely love it. If you love monsters, if you love procedurals, if you like, you know, a new element brought into a show each episode, I think you'll really enjoy it. There were some truly standout favorite episodes for me. My favorite was one of the Halloween episodes they did, which was based on La Llorona, which is that tale. It's kind of a Latin America folklore. I've talked about her before on the Vlogtober series, but she's probably my favorite urban legend folklore about a woman who has murdered her children. And so, like I said, the origin story is a little bit contested, but the whole basic premise is that she has killed her kids, and then she's trying to find their bodies to bring them back to be able to get into heaven. And so people say that she will just murder kids to try and like play them off as her own children to get through to go to heaven. So it is a fabulous tale, and it was one of my favorite episodes. And another one of my favorites was in the last season, where they have a weird, like a love potion gets slipped into all their drinks, and they all start falling in love with other people's significant others. It was so funny, it's so entertaining. But I definitely recommend that you guys check out this show. It is absolutely brilliant, and I think you'll like it. So those are my picks for today. I know this is a long one again. I'm sorry, we're at the 43-minute mark or so, but let's go ahead and move to tomorrow's final prompt. So you probably guessed it, but tomorrow's prompt is Happy Halloween. So I want to hear about your favorite movies that take place on Halloween. So not kind of a Halloween tale. I want to know about a movie that's set directly on Halloween. So we'll leave it at that, and I will talk to all of your lovely faces tomorrow.